Thank you for joining us and tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Holyoke, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and I am here with our very own historian, Robert Colmoon. He is the founder and also tour guide of the Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke. He offers both public and private tours of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Massachusetts. You can find out his website, more information, at holyokecanaltour.org. There he has videos, past and present photos, as well as his 2023 schedule. So today we'll be talking about the Protestant cemeteries of Chicopee throughout its history. So can you name the Protestant cemeteries of Chicopee with their year of origin?
Well, that'll be a tough job, but I can do it. Okay, well, there's the Chicopee Street Cemetery. That one is, of course, on Chicopee Street, and that one is the first Protestant cemetery in Chicopee. The origin of Chicopee was along that street, and of course you need to have a meeting house, which is called a congregational church. And the congregational church is not the original one, but it's still on that street, only maybe 200 yards to the north of the cemetery. And so its origin is in with that church. Now, Chicopee was nothing more than a village in size. It was just a precinct of Springfield, and it had ambitions because it had a river that they can build mills on. But to power mills, you needed canals, and they ended up getting two canals, and that's why the next two cemeteries came along. The next two cemeteries were started because the mills grew and it forced the population upwards. The mill workers and the canal diggers were mostly Catholics, and so you had development of population. But this is about Protestants, and there were definitely Protestants mixed in there, especially the people that owned the mills and the middle level management, so forth. And this was a very typical pattern. And so what happened was you have the East Street Cemetery start up in Chicopee Falls section, and you had the Maple Grove Cemetery start up in Chicopee Center section, and so you had three cemeteries right there. Now, there was a movement in the United States after the Civil War to make cemeteries look better. And there was a movement even to move graves from the older cemeteries into the modern cemeteries. And this happened in all the communities that I've researched along the Connecticut River Valley. It happened in Northampton. It happened in Amherst. It happened in Holyoke, Westfield. It happened in Springfield. It happened in Chicopee. And the cemetery that came along, the fourth Protestant cemetery, ended up being called the New Cemetery from 1870 to 1890. And then from 1890 onwards, it was called the Fairview Cemetery. And that cemetery is much better looking than the other ones. I wouldn't call it the rural cemetery design, but it's close to that. It's not quite as beautiful enough to be called the rural cemetery. So all these cemeteries were started up for a very good reason, and they followed, of course, the population, except the last one. When people started developing ways to move things around and moving out from the city core, they developed nicer and nicer cemeteries along the way. So I want to give you some of the years. You notice the last one, Fairview, started in the year 1870. And the reason, of course, it came last because at that point they wanted to develop nicer and nicer ones. Now, the other ones, the Chicopee Street Burial Ground, that was from the origin of Chicopee itself. And so that came from 1751. All right, so that is very old. It's as old as Chicopee was a village. The next one that came along, Maple Grove Cemetery, from 1838. That it was started and finished in 1839. And that one's an okay looking one now. It could be built up a little bit better to make it look a little bit better than it is. And then the last one that came around was the East Street, last one I'm talking about was the East Street Cemetery, and that came in the late 1820s. Okay?
Okay. Now, why are each of these cemeteries started?
Right, the reason why they would start these up is because they want to have unique properties to them. You want to have them serve different populations, and you also want them to be able to give a design. And the one that was the Chicopee Street one, that one was started just to serve a small amount of people that are along Chicopee Street. It's the smallest of the 4 Protestant cemeteries. And if you go there, it's one of 2 cemeteries in Chicopee that's always locked, so you have to view it from the outside. I'm hoping to have a tour there where we open up and go inside. And so it was started because they had to serve the Congregational Church. It's a congregational denomination Protestant cemetery. The next one to come along was the East Street Cemetery. Now, that one was not to serve a particular denomination of religious group within the Protestant sect. It was for all the Protestants, and it was mostly put there because the canal, the Chicopee Falls Canal, was put there, and the mills built up around it. So you needed more and more burial grounds for the people that were coming in. And the next one in chronological order was the Maple Grove, and that one's a typical lawn cemetery. That means everything's laid out straight. There's no curves anywhere. And this is the first lawn cemetery in Chicopee. And this one was put in for a reason because there's 2 canals in Chicopee. There's not one. There was Chicopee Falls Canal started in 1823, and there's Chicopee Center Canal started in 1832. So within a few years, 1838, they needed a cemetery. There's so many workers coming in, and they needed a place to bury them close by. And the last one is because across the United States, I told you there's a movement to have beautiful cemeteries. And in some sense, it's the most beautiful of all. It looks like a lawn cemetery, but if you look close at it, it might have some of the properties of rurals.
Now, do you think that they are well maintained?
I would say yes. I could go through them. 2 of them are locked, so the 2 oldest Protestant cemeteries are locked. When I look inside them, they're like well maintained. There's no gravestones falling down in the ground, and they cut the grass when needed. I wish they were opened up, though. They're one of the few locked cemeteries in the entire Connecticut River Valley, and it might be because of vandalism. I don't know. Now, the Maple Grove needs improvement. They tried half century ago to get and pick up some of the gravestones that have fallen down, but they didn't do a good job. They didn't hire specialists. And a lot of the maple trees in the cemetery are fallen down. It's Maple Grove Cemetery for a reason, but I say half the maple trees are gone now. And some people who live nearby have told me that they hear the big branches fall, and you should get someone in to cut these things down and make it more beautiful. And the same with Fairview Cemetery. It's beautiful to a point, but there's no curved lines around it. So what kind of cemetery did they want it to be? Usually in the 1870s, they were starting to have rural cemeteries, which are gorgeous, with curved lines. And this one doesn't really have that. But on the other hand, a lot of the stones are gorgeous. There's a chapel inside there that's absolutely gorgeous called Spalding Chapel. So I would say it's a mixed package in Chicopee.
Okay, so thank you, Robert, for joining us, and you can find more information on his tours on his website at holycanaltour.org, where again you can find some of his videos, past and present photos, as well as information on his various tours and his upcoming 2023 schedule. You can also set up private tours with him as your personal tour guide. They make for fun and educational activities for the family, or for group parties for the special occasions and events, or for just a day out. You can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. Again, that's BOBCAT4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And thank you again for joining us, and check out some of our other podcasts. Telling us about your Catholic Cemeteries of Chicopee tour. So, can you list out the name of each Catholic cemetery in Chicopee, along with its year of origin?
Okay, there's quite a complex situation here, because the first Catholic cemetery ever in Western Massachusetts was along the Chicopee border. It was called the St. Matthew's Cemetery. And it might have been the first Catholic cemetery, not only in Western Massachusetts, but also in reach of southern Vermont, eastern New York State, and northern Connecticut. So a lot of burials from those three regions also came to St. Matthew's Cemetery. But it's right outside the border, and that's important because the next cemetery to come along was a Calvary Cemetery, and that cemetery was the second Catholic cemetery of Western Massachusetts. It was, in both cases, they were made for the Holy Name Parish. Now, the next one that came along is the St. Patrick's Cemetery in Chicopee Falls, and that came along to serve the parish of the St. Patrick's Church, but I also ended up serving the St. George Church too. And then there was the St. Rose de Lima Cemetery, and that one's in Aldenville, and that one was made, obviously served that namesake church, and that one very, very much served the French-Canadian population of Chicopee. Now, the year of origins are the St. Matthew's one in 1845, the Calvary one came along in 1851, the St. Patrick's one came in 1873, and the St. Rose de Lima Cemetery came in 1911.
Okay, so now why was each of these cemeteries started?
Okay, they were started for very different reasons in every case. The St. Matthew's one, just outside of Chicopee, was started because there was none in Western Massachusetts, nor in very few anywhere in New England. So it was started because they desperately needed one. And it shows, there's a lot of poor people back then, and it shows, you go to that cemetery, and it should be 8,000 inscribed names if every one had a inscription, and yet there's only 500 or so names. Most don't have anything there. And then the next one, the Calvary Cemetery, was started by the Holy Name Parish. In fact, they both were, St. Matthew's and Calvary. And this one was started for the reason that they realized they needed much more space for burials. Remember, there's now only two in the whole of Western Massachusetts, and they're both in or near Chicopee. And then the last two, the St. Patrick's one started up because in the Falls section of Chicopee, you had a church starting up, the St. Patrick's Church, 1871, and within 2 years, he had that cemetery ready for use. And it started because they didn't have a ferry, or they might have had a ferry crossing Chicopee River, but it's very difficult. And so burials in the north of Chicopee, in Chicopee Falls, had to be put in the ground in a cost-effective way, and that's done by avoiding the ferry crossing. So they started a cemetery in the north. And then the St. Rose de Lima started in Aldenville, and the reason why there's so many French Canadians coming around 1900, and they wanted their own culture.
Okay, so now quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill in our listeners, if you want to find out more information or to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. There he has both videos of the various stops along each tour, also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you are interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. They make perfect for fun and educational activities outdoors for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those of special occasions, get-togethers. They are also good for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, what types of cemeteries are these?
Now, there's 4 types of cemeteries that are around the United States. There's one called a churchyard, another called a family, another called a lawn, where you have a very uniform arrangement, and one called a rural cemetery, And if you look at these four, they're all in the format of a lawn cemetery, even though some of them came before the lawn kind of cemetery was even around. So the St. Matthew one ended up looking that way, and that's because they didn't have any styles back then, and so they put them in. It might even be called a churchyard one, but it's not near the church it serves, which is 2 miles away. So Catholic cemeteries tend to be that way. They tend to be one type only, the lawn type, and they avoid the others because they're very specialized or they're too expensive.
Now, do you think that they are well maintained?
They're all about equally well maintained. The St. Rosa and Lima is probably the best in maintenance. They have a superintendent on staff for the daylight hours, and that keeps the grounds up to a very high level. And that's why it's very, very popular with people and very popular with pastors who got buried in the priest circle. The other ones are okay. At this point, the St. Matthew's one is taken care of by an outside group, but the Calvary and the St. Patrick's one are taken care of by Catholic churches in Chicopee. So they probably have pretty decent maintenance there. And the worst one is St. Matthew, and which is always locked up anyway. So.
Okay. Now, so thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a variety of his other podcasts as well, and much more at his website at hoyokenontour.org. And again, you can also email him directly for private tours or for any other inquiries at bobcat4214, capital B. Again, that's BOBCAT 4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 schedule as it becomes available. And thank you for tuning in.